We always underestimate these key books.
I am going to disagree with Rick respectfully.
Here's what they're reacting to.
Action one, probably 250 copies out there. I know you've heard a lot of people bandy, oh, there's only 100 that exist. We know that's not true. The day of the internet has really opened up. I think in the early days, it was very much a good thing for dealers to say, oh, this is one of 100 copies. I might have even said it myself because that's what we thought was true before the advent of the Gerber guides and the internet, which exposed that there are probably 200, 300 copies of Action One. There's no way that if I've owned 16 copies of Action One, that I've owned 10% of all the existing Action Ones. It's just not a realistic assumption to make. So we know there's hundreds of copies out there, probably 200 or 300. I think at one time, Ben, we were putting a list together of somebody, we had come up with 130 known copies. And then there's all the unknown, the collectors that we don't know have them.
So that was from Rick, and I wanted to throw that back at you. Does two to
I
300
I
sound like a reasonable estimate?
I agree with Rick. I agree with him completely. We always underestimate these key books uh, for a number of reasons. Do you know how many people there are with collections that are we don't even know they exist? How do you think these new collections keep getting discovered? It's because there's only what 350 million basements in the United States. It's like the number of stars in the sky. I mean, the chances of there being undiscovered collections still exists. It still remains. And because of that, there's going to be more copies out there. So I've heard so many people, though, disagree with Rick's estimate. I have to say that the majority of people I discuss that with, oh, no, you're crazy. There just can't be that many copies. And my argument is um, we don't know much because we don't have data. And trying to divine the universe is tough. Also, remember, Action 1 sold extremely well. It's Action 2 and 3 that are the real questions in my mind. Even 4, 5, and 6 weren't doing that great. They figured out that with 7, that's how you sell books. Maybe we should capitalize the E in estimates so to remind people that these are people's opinions. Sometimes they're considered and savvy opinions because they've handled a million books. But that doesn't mean they're not opinions. They're just experiential projections of what we think and believe. And so to take those to the bank would be a mistake.
I am going to disagree with Rick respectfully. Uh,
Okay.
I think 200, I think even 200 is a stretch. So here's my reasoning behind it, and I could be wrong. Time will tell. But I think there's two sources of where Action Ones come from. There's the true finds, the ones that you find in the basements, the attics, under the bed. And then you have the ones that were found years ago that have their locked away collections, like Gary's talking about. The true find one, or finding the ones out in the wilderness, that's obviously diminishing over time. The people that would have bought that off the newsstand and for whatever reason saved it, or their family saved it, every passing decade that number is diminishing because those people are passing away. But then, I think the bigger question is who's got one out there that they've been sitting on all these years that hasn't come to market yet. I think of it this way. Since CGC's been around for 25 years, every sale, or let's say the majority of the sales of Action One since then, since 2000, have involved that copy being certified because of the money it was bringing at the time and the fact that it was bringing even more money in a holder, that when they were turning up, they were getting certified. So that would mean that every copy that was changed hands prior to CGC, prior to 2000, would be the ones that we're talking about right now. Obviously, conceivably, some copies change hands in 05 or 10 or 15. That raw between a collector to a collector that we never heard about, but probably small in number. If all the transactions that took place prior to 2000 are the pool of books that we're talking about that have not come to market yet, those people now, how old would a person have to be in 1995 to afford an Action One? Because they were fetching a decent copy. You could probably get, I don't know what, maybe 20,000, 30,000 and up for like a low grade copy, or higher, based on the condition. Well, what age range of people had that kind of access to that kind of money? People in their 20s, people in their 30s. Let's say 30s. Okay, so if you're 30 years old in 1995, okay, so that now you're 60. Okay, so now we come into the three Ds: death, divorce, and debt. Okay, the three reasons people sell their books. And when you're 60 years old or 70 years old or whatever, there's a diminishing number of people that are going to hold on to those copies, for any given reason. Maybe they just want to free some cash up to go do an addition to their house, take a vacation, they owe money, they're going through
Pay
divorce.
off their house.
Right. And so, so I feel like, whoever's still holding on to copies that they bought in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, that's what's left, right? Plus the handful that are turning up over the years out of the wilderness, from the wilderness. And so what is that number? I mean, is it 100? Is it 50? Is it 200? And I mean, I just look at those numbers. I roll them around in my head, and I also look at the number of copies that are being submitted to CGC that's dropping off. I feel like even if one came out per year, for the next 10 years, it's only 10 copies. Let's say two come out, that's 20. That puts us at like 110. It's going to take 50 years at the rate we're going to get up to 150, or maybe 30 years or something. So I don't know. That's based on, maybe I'm being too pragmatic about it, but I feel like the number is probably 120.
Well, I think your analysis is sound. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I hope there are 200 out there, because that means an extra 100 people that can own one.
That book is worth so much for so long. It's hard to believe somebody who is not the original owner, and there might be two generations separated, wouldn't cash that in.
Well, I think Matt's analysis is impeccable. I just think that we're in the dark data-wise,
Yeah.
and we won't be out of the dark until we have data. And so that goes back to the CGC census. It's the first real attempt at accumulating data that's usable. It's certainly flawed in that sometimes people can submit the same book more than once, but it's the first step towards real data of any kind. And all I have to say to that is I am so grateful and thankful, because I've been on this bandwagon since CVM. I've been trying to get people to think in terms of data so that we could make statements that weren't just out of our rear ends.
How about you? How many copies of Action Comics #1 do you think that are out there? Do you agree with Matt and me, maybe 100 to 150, or are you more in agreement with Rick and Gary, who think it's above 200? And by the way, Rick actually does think some books are legitimately rare.
Look on any website you want, look on eBay, look in the Heritage Archives. It just never comes up for sale for whatever reason. When it comes to major keys, I believe it's the least seen. Putting a run of Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 50 or 1 through 100, even in 9.0, there's no challenge to it.
And you can find out about those rare books in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you around real soon.